You know, it's like the audio is set to default, but you know what it doesn't do? Use my default audio.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why?
Because God hates us.
Yeah, probably. All right, well, let's get started. Fanfiction, Contempt Theater, episode, was it 90? 86. 86. Oof, 86.
Ugh. Yeah, just remember, we're almost done with the year.
I know, it's wild. It's crazy. Okay, well.
Yeah, I guess it's just you and me. This is depressing. This is definitely a cast, something that works best with like a 3-man cast, but I think we can power through this.
Yeah, we can probably handle this, no problem. So just make sure everyone's aware. Okay, well, let us, you know what, let's start off with Harry Potter today. Because we both know Harry Potter.
Yes. Ugh, excuse me.
And then, I don't know, we can try and do some Dresden as well. I know enough about
We can do Harry
Dresden
Potter.
to...
We can try to do some Dresden, Naruto, Bleach. We can hit Star Wars.
Wow!
That.
Mortal Instruments really has 17k stories. You know, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm gonna be honest, like, there's not a lot you can do in Mortal Instruments in terms of, like, genuine fan fiction. You know,
what do you mean?
So, like, now keep in mind, I did only read Mortal Instruments 13 years ago. But from what I remember, there was a lot of stuff going on in the series that was like, this event is happening at this exact time, and because the heroes took this exact route with these exact actions, they managed to show up at the right time for the thing to happen, and then that's why the plot occurred. And
yeah, I mean,
so it's like, oh, well, what if they get there faster, then they miss it? What if they get there slower, then they miss it? You know, what if they didn't encounter, you know, Warlock A when they went to go meet Frazzle McDumpy? Oh, well, you know, actually, by not meeting that character, you know, when they met Frazzle, they didn't have the knowledge of the sorts of people and actions a warlock takes, so they bungle the negotiations, so they don't get the thing that they need. And it's like, and then on top of that, you got like 2 Zinches in the story pulling all the strings, and it's like, you know, basically it'd be really hard to write a fanfic.
yeah.
Because like everything is being accounted for and manipulated by like several, you know, immortal grand planners with Oracle site.
And I do want to point out, just popping back to one of the things that we've cautioned both
Yeah.
authors and readers about before. Remember, your characters are only as smart as you.
Yeah, and you can model characters smarter than you, but that does also take a sufficient level of intelligence in of itself.
Which, that sounds kind of mean, but all we mean to say is, if you've ever thought to yourself, much like I have, I specifically hung around with people much smarter than me in high school. I am not the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah.
Just be careful if you're trying to write an overly complicated, brilliant plan, right?
Right, yeah.
Sometimes if you just follow the KISS rule,
yeah,
keep it simple, stupid, that works too.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like, who was it? Sanderson, I believe, was the one giving the writing advice on how to write characters smarter than you, and I believe part of that writing advice was specifically, if you're going to try and write someone smarter than you, know someone smarter than you, and basically base the character off of them. Like, how do they react to this thing happening? How do they react to this thing happening?
Yeah. That might have been Sanderson. It's been a while since I watched any of his writing talk stuff, just because I'm cold and dead inside and gave up on my hopes and dreams.
That's fair.
But it certainly sounds like something he would say. Him or Butcher.
You know what? It might have been Butcher. It might have been. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's if you don't have an example, like what's the Sherlock, the TV show. The TV show is a great example of not dumb people, but like midwits writing what they think a smart person sounds like.
Yeah. I hate that I have to say this. Which Sherlock do you mean?
What do you mean?
Like the most recent one on the BBC with
Yeah, the TV show
with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Cumberbatch. Yeah.
Benedict Cumberbund. Yeah.
Yeah.
The internet has destroyed people's ability to remember that man's name correctly.
Cabbage Patch Lima Bean.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, because it's like, I remember seeing some examples that people post places where it's like a smart person trying to assassinate two people in a hotel room would buy like, yeah, that one would buy like the room next to them or across from them to see the layout of the room. They would, test the soundproofing by playing loud music like the week before to see if anyone reports them, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's like how Sherlock writes smart characters. Well, first, Sherlock pretends to be a maid by disguising his entire body with makeup, and then the thugs burst in and shoot him, but actually it was a body double that was just like 5 paper clips and a wire connecting it all, and that was being puppeted by strings coming from the light. And then one guard turns to the other guard and shoots him, and it turns out that actually Sherlock was the third guard the whole time, and he uses a pocket full of honey to trigger an allergic reaction in the second guard before he can react. And it's like, yeah, that is pretty much how the show goes, where it's just like these incredibly ridiculous explanations and plans that make no sense at all to make Sherlock look like he's some sort of genius planner.
And yeah, like you said, there's a lot easier ways to go about, right?
Yeah.
Like the example you gave is a great example. Or there's always, he called and used just like basic phishing to find out what room of the hotel they were in, and then went to the hotel across the street and rented a room at the same height,
right?
And then fired a rifle across, right, or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of ways to do it. I mean, phishing's actually a great example because that's very prevalent. And like, surprisingly easy to do, because it's like the hotel staff doesn't really know the people, and if you have like 4 people listed for one hotel room, and the guy calls in and he's like, hey, I'm with Preston Jarvie, but he forgot to tell me what hotel room I was supposed to go to. What was that one again? I have to leave later than they normally did, so I didn't pay attention. How long did we book the room? Just questions that, I mean, are they a little bit weird? But they're not weird enough that someone is going to be suspicious of these questions.
I would say, right, and there's a fine line with social engineering, right? Someone calls and says, is such and such a person staying there? They're not allowed to give that information out. But if you call and say, my name is such and such, I'm on the reservation with such and such, I lost my email with my booking number. Can you tell me what room we're in so I can go, right? Or like, I forgot the key. My ID's up there, so I can't prove to you that I'm in the room. Can you just tell me what room it is, and I'll go knock on their door?
Right. Yeah. So it's really easy stuff of like, oh hey, they already checked in. I ran a little bit late. They know. What was their room number? It's just like basic stuff like that, like stuff you could get away with asking at the front desk, but if you make yourself sound harried and you just didn't want answers, like come on man, just give me the answers, I'm tired, it's been like a whole thing, just tell me what I need to know. And most people, it's a mix of, well, I'm just doing my job and sort of wanting to help, that they'll just give you the information because they're like, oh, well, what's the harm in that? Even if he's not supposed to be there, me telling them that they're in room 682, what's that really gonna do? Nothing.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, right? The reason that, right, 9 times out of 10, when you hear about company A suffered catastrophic data breach B, it's just because some guy went fishing.
Yeah. I mean, it's the CEO called in and he said he needs the new password now because he forgot it again, and he left his paper at home. And the IT team is probably going to roll their eyes and just give him the new password because this is the 5th time he's probably done it.
Yeah, as long as you sound like the CEO and you don't make any, horribly egregious noise, right? Guess what?
Well, I mean, and a
It's
lot of that
going
can
to
even get
work.
masked. Like if you just sound older and you add the phone static into your call and you make it sound like you're shouting from like your car or something, people will look over a lot of like, oh, well, he must sound different because he's like, taking the call from his car.
Yeah. Bonus points if you do something like you call on Teams and you have it actually propped up on a phone in a car, like.
Right. I mean, getting access to his teams is going to be a little bit harder, and usually at that point, you're probably already going to have the password to accessing everything. But
Oh yeah, because I forgot Teams does warn you about external organization calls now.
Yeah.
I was thinking of old Teams, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about doing it. There's a lot of ways to make your character look smart, without having to be like, look how amazing they are. They're playing 5D chess in their heads. It's like, okay, yeah.
Because here's the thing: as soon as you say, "Look at how amazing they are," they're playing 5D chess in their head. You, the writer, have lost 5D chess.
Yeah. So anyway, the Harry Potter section is massive. Also, the reason why I kind of brought all of this up in the first place and wanted to talk about it is because it's a massive problem in the Harry Potter section, which I'm sure I'm sure anyone that's ever read a Harry Potter fanfic knows as well, is that very often Harry Potter is not written as a child. He's written as a hyper competent 20-something who, by being told that Gringotts runs on silver, copper, and gold still, suddenly he hatches a ingenious plan to trade money in for basically vastly more valuable metal coins, and then he like sells them off into the Muggle market, and accumulates vast amount of wealth, or upon hearing that he has a trust fund, he's instantly like, oh, and if I remove all the money from my trust fund, will it refill? Which,
yes.
What in the fresh economic fuck did I just walk into?
Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And the bad economics.
Yeah. We're talking about Harry Potter and how in Harry Potter fanfics, a lot of authors tend to write Harry Potter as this like hyper competent 25-year-old who is.
I heard all that.
Okay.
I heard all that. I came in at the hyper competent 20-something-year-old.
Right. Okay.
That's where I first came in.
Yeah. It's a major problem in the Harry Potter community because not a lot of people realize that children think differently, despite everyone in the room being a child at some point. No one ever looked back and said, why did I do that? Why did I have those thoughts? Why did I think licking the window would taste good?
That's a very specific one.
I've never actually licked a window. But I know it's used as an insult, so But it's like, the way children think, and I think that's why I kind of liked the Wizards at War series, is the Wizards at War series actually competently wrote children, and where the main characters oftentimes had these really illogical ideas of like how systems work, or how how they should handle a problem that's coming to them, because they're children. They don't have world experience. They don't have a greater understanding of domino effect and causality. They're the sorts of people that will form a cargo cult because A, it sounds fun, and B, when we kicked the tree last time, an apple fell down. So if we just kick the tree every day, we'll get an apple every day, of course.
Yes.
No
problems with that.
Yeah. And so a lot of Harry Potter fanfic suffers from it, and even when it's not always like Harry Potter, the 5G chess player who, outsmarts the entirety of the wizarding world and the goblin bankers by turning all of the goblin gold into vast fortunes in the span of 3 days. They still have a problem, even if they're trying to write him as a normal child.
I don't know how to gently break this to most of the fanfiction authors. None of y'all are normal.
Yeah.
You're all deranged.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I'm a fanfiction author, so that includes me, by the way.
Yeah, probably. Then you have stories like these where it's just like, why? Alas, what pitiful longing, by Nouv Rouve. Having just escaped from the Dementor's kiss with the instructions from Dumbledore, Sirius Black is to remain in hiding at a strange foreign witch's house. How hard can it be to simply lay low when you've spent more than a third of your life in Azkaban? It's harder than one can imagine. It's a drama hurt comfort story featuring a what is likely a self-insert original character and Sirius Black. Assumedly, Sirius weeps his eyes out at the original character, who tells him that everything is okay and that they can totally get together and it's all right. It's like, congratulations. You did, in fact, choose a Harry Potter character to write your story about. It's a little weird that the story you're choosing to write for a child section is a sexual fantasy. I mean, at least this time the sexual fantasy wasn't about a child.
Yeah,
which is unfortunately common.
Unfortunate amount of that.
Yeah. It's still just kind of like a weird story, though. I can't imagine a prisoner of a soul-sucking facility would have a hard time laying low. Especially if they spent, quote, a third of their life in this soul-sucking facility. Because I don't know about you, but if I'm hanging on to barely scraps of happiness and my sanity with it, I probably wouldn't sit there and be like, I'm gonna go light off some fireworks and have a wild drinking party. I would probably be like, I'm gonna sit here in bed and enjoy the fact that I have a bed now.
I'm going to sit here and enjoy the fact that no one's sucking my soul.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
That's a real nifty one, boys.
Yeah, so it's drama as well. I can understand hurt comfort, right? I get that part, because, you know, the guy the story is about is recovering from effectively magical PTSD. Which I can only imagine is worse than normal PTSD. Specifically because it's targeting your soul, which I have no idea how that would affect your psyche. Especially if it specifically ate your happy memories. I can only assume it goes something along the lines of Kingdom Hearts.
I mean, you're probably not wrong, but
and I'm not saying you people can't have their fantasies about this stuff. It's like, yeah, whatever. But it's sort of like the same sort of thing where it's like, you know, your bully's being mean to you in school, and so you imagine, like, taking the pencil in your hand and, like, jabbing him in the eye and somehow fighting all his friends, despite the fact that you're, like, this skinny nerd who doesn't work out at all, and they're all super jocks. And, like, you have this whole, like, fantasy in your head of you beating up all of your bullies, and, like, everyone's telling you how amazing you are. But you don't tell people that fantasy. You know?
not if you know what's good for you.
I mean, not just if you know what's good for you. It's just like, generally, there are certain fantasies that people don't want to know about.
Yeah.
Before we get into the whole what did you just post hours, please take a look at this. Wildbow wrote a mini essay on his writing process and his burnout, and even drew some doodles. Okay, I think you'll enjoy it. Verona is one of the MCs from the newest story, who is a romantic who ran away from her dad's home and lives in a Howl's Moving crack house for troubled teens. Interesting. Yeah, sure. I would love to hear about an author's.
Since we haven't read about Wildbow's, since none of us have read Wildbow's stuff, and that's a quite the interesting statement. Why don't we go back to fanfiction?
I mean, I would like to hear about Wildbow's opinions on his writing pace, because you got to keep in mind he's written like 1.5 million word stories at this point. And if this graph is anything to go by in terms of posting times, that's kind of wild, where it starts in pre-2001, typically posting at midnight, and then over time, the daytime he posts it goes all the way in a straight line up through the hours of the day, back to posting at midnight at the end.
Yeah.
It's like kind of... I can't be good for your mind.
The graph in and of itself is interesting.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to sit here and read everything word for word. I just kind of want to get the general idea of what he's saying here when it comes to writer burnout and keeping a mind on your plot. Some users say Wildbow's going through a midlife crisis. I've run into the term of writer's block on top of that in reference to how I went down to 1 chapter a week. I mean, 1 chapter a week is pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, that's not like nothing.
To me, the first doesn't apply. I don't go through a midlife crisis. Okay. Similar to Verona, was talking usual life paths. I'm not interested in marriage. I'm not interested in dating. I don't have no interest in kid, and I don't feel like my life is running out. All right, fair enough. Writer's block. When my writing slowed down, I looked for professionals, 2 therapists, and a career counselor. I mean,
well, that's a decision.
Take it in context, though. I mean, it sort of makes sense because, like, he wrote some of these stories out of spite, and if hatred is all you have going as to why you're making certain story beat decisions, then unless you keep fanning those flames of hatred, you're gonna really lose interest in your story. And more importantly, when you are writing this story as a form of income, you losing interest in your story will cause your audience to lose interest in your story.
True.
So I mean, that's personally, I would say don't write the story out of spite in the first place.
But that ship sailed with Ward, so.
Yeah. Rather than assign me to him, their office assigned me to a sex abuse therapist.
Huh?
I think that's just a failure of your system then. I mean, if I called an office and said, hey, I want this guy, and they say, no, sorry, he's busy. However, we've decided to give you a time slot with this sex abuse therapist, I would just be like, I don't want that.
Yeah. This is not what I requested, signed up for, or desire.
Waba was abused by the Cauldron mods. I mean, you're not wrong. I don't think he was sexually abused, which is definitely a different dynamic. Where the two were getting headway, I performed my situation, ran around the idea of writer's block. The crew counselor said, I don't know about writing or writer's block. Okay, yeah, it sounds like a pretty bad career counselor. Like,
yeah,
a career counselor is not supposed to know every profession. They're supposed to know, like, general ideas. Like, oh, I'm having really a lot of trouble writing. Oh, well, have you tried, like, not watching TV in the morning and instead just making your breakfast without any, sort of interference, and then sitting down to try and write instead of, like, getting distracted? Or have you considered why you're writing? Like, you don't really need to know. I mean, like, it's sort of the same thing for everything. We call it writer's block, but what it really is a loss of motivation due to multiple factors. Everything from events going on in your life, like, oh yeah, your dad died, which, kind of made you sad. And, because you're sad, you aren't writing as much as you used to. It can be simple. I mean, and it's not just writing. Oh, because you're sad, you're not going to the gym as much as you used to. Because you're sad, you aren't working as hard at your job as you used to. I mean, it's just a motivation issue. It's not special to writing. It's just when your production is measured in days and weeks instead of hours, you not posting for weeks gets noticed.
I mean, there's not a ton else for me to write.
Yeah.
If your job is, like you said, post X number of things X times a week, and you go 4 weeks without posting, people are gonna go, well, what the heck am I paying you for?
Yeah. Writer's block is something that's a myth. Writer's block is a catch-all term. Yeah, so basically what I said. Not having inspiration, not having motivation, not having time, being discouraged, losing attachment to the story. Yeah, so basically literally what I said.
I'm not sure how to feel about learning there are people who have used the term writer's block and don't understand what it is if they write.
Yeah.
This is the first for me, because my first time with writer's block, I lost one. I was like, oh, so this is writer's block. Man, this sucks.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I understood immediately what the problem was, but I couldn't fix it. Because the
Yeah.
block in particular was kind of out of my mental control at the time.
Yeah.
How do people not understand that term if they're a writer?
Well, I mean, I actually had this conversation earlier, Max, with someone else who was a writer. Not this exact conversation, but the general idea. Some people don't want to learn.
This isn't even about learning, though. This should be as simple as, like, I feel like there's something keeping me from writing, and 2 + 2 = 4.
Yes. Some people don't want to learn. Some people look at 2 + 2 = 4 and say, that's too hard. I'm going to ignore it.
Yeah, that just... I don't understand that because, like, right, there was a story that Max and I were writing. I was quite enjoying the story because I was doing something with my friend.
Right.
But the writers for that particular thing really lost the plot. And, understandably, well, that killed Max's motivation to continue writing that particular story.
We all know which story it is. You don't have to fucking hide it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the same thing with Undying Scarab. I really liked writing Undying Scarab. I really liked sitting down with Gray and talking about Undying Scarab. Unfortunately, Gray has decided, for an arbitrary reason, to go into work at 3 a.m. and go to sleep at 4 a.m. or 4 p.m., which obviously means I don't get to sit down with Gray anymore. Which, obviously means that I don't really think about Undying Scarab. Like, I still think about the story and what I could do for it, but I'm not, like, constantly running the wheel, And also, Blizzard dropped the ball on World of Warcraft massively.
Oh, they dropped that ball hard.
For, like, 4 expansions in a row now, they've dropped the ball really hard. And I just can't care anymore about WoW story. And so writing a WoW fanfiction makes it really hard, even if I am just doing it in what is now termed classic WoW, Wrath of Lich King, and I don't really need to know the story past Wrath of Lich King. My interest in the game and my interest in the series took a massive hit when I was effectively told by the company that makes the game that my way of playing the game isn't monetizable enough, so therefore I am superfluous to support. Also, they made a really, really garbage storyline where it's all about feelings and peace and unity in a game called World of War. Little bit, not what I came for.
I came here because I wanted to see war crimes. Garrosh gave me that.
Effectively.
You know who didn't give me that? In a satisfying manner? Sylvanas.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like, the only part of Sylvanas' new storyline that anyone liked was the burning of Teldrassil, because everyone was like, oh my god. something's happening.
Although, to be fair, that's not...
Yeah.
To be fair, that's not, strictly speaking, a... how do I say this? That was not exclusively her problem, like a Sylvanas problem.
No, it wasn't. She was just the latest character to get ruined by stagnancy and other things, but specifically people were like, "Oh, hey, this is a really cool plot point." Why is it a cool plot point? Because something actually happened finally in the world.
And we've been, I mean, the world had been stagnant for 4 expansions at that point.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, when you have so many expansions of nothing matters, because everything that happens in this expansion will have no relevance to anything that happens in the next expansion, or the world map, or plot. Stop caring.
Yeah. I think all 3 of us in here have a co-op story that the other writer just lost interest on, actually. Because Atin's got the Ruby story, you've got the Warcraft story, and I've got the Dark Souls story.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem with Dark Souls for us was just a change in lifestyles, mixed with Dark Souls as a game being retired.
Well, yeah, I would ascribe it mostly to the lifestyle changes, though, because we could have kept to the end of just Dark Souls 1 and not gone past that.
Oh, 100% we could have, but it was, for me personally, it was, a mix of the lifestyle changes, but also just the fact that I didn't wake up and play Dark Souls. In fact, by the time we got to the chapter we got to in the Dark Souls story, both of us only played Dark Souls specifically to look at stuff that was relevant to the chapter we were writing. Like, we weren't playing Dark Souls anymore because we liked Dark Souls. We were playing Dark Souls because we wanted to get a better idea of what the map looked like, so we could describe it in the story.
I mean, well, no, we were still playing it on top of that, though. It's just...
No, by the time we got to the chapter that we stopped at, no, we weren't.
No, we did. That was 2013 and 2014. We weren't playing Dark Souls much anymore because I was back home having dropped out of college. So I didn't have that time anymore.
True. Yeah, that's right. We did try to set up.
Like, we didn't stop playing the game because it stopped being fun. We stopped playing the game.
Well, I didn't say we stopped.
Well,
I didn't say we stopped playing the game because it stopped being fun. It's still fun. It's just I beat the game and I didn't have a reason to go back and play it again. And you weren't able to play anymore, and we weren't able to do meetups anymore where we could talk shit and play Dark Souls. And by the end, I remember it was like, I remember specifically when we were writing the Seethe chapter, I didn't even have Dark Souls installed anymore, and I asked you to see if you still had Dark Souls installed so you could load the game up and look at the library for me.
yeah, I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
It was also the first time I realized, oh wow, I can't trust Sneaky to write chapters on his own.
Yes, that was your second mistake, but
yeah, not making that mistake again.
Different issue, though.
It's a mistake I've managed to avoid pretty well for the last 8 years, give or take. So I guess I learned the lesson on that one, just not in the way we expected.
I suppose, yeah. And I mean, and what we're talking about here is literally what Wild Bo proceeds to talk about here. Is, you know, when he was a teenager, his writing schedule looked like this. Most of the week was spent writing because he was having fun. When he got older, his writing schedule turned more into the weekends I wrote. And then when he got older, his writing schedule turned into I write on Thursday.
Only on Thursdays, huh?
Yeah, pretty much, according to this graph here.
Mm.
And I mean, that's kind of just how it is, you know? Whether it's going to the more advanced classes in college where you pick up a job that isn't writing, you just have less time. You know, God forbid you get a significant other or younger family members involved into your life, and now you have even less time. You know, so I understand the issues with that and how it can really significantly hamper your capacity to write. But I will say at the same time that unless you're being paid in a position to write, there's a reason why a lot of authors were very isolated people. Because writing was their life. That's what they did. They woke up, they wrote. So anyway, yeah, it's, you know. And there's not much else going on here. Posting times, yeah. I started getting distracted. I started losing my way. I had less free time, less energy. And, you know, putting hard deadlines on myself arbitrarily, not sleeping properly. I tried to change up my style with writing, by writing more with a more of an outline. I mean, like, that's another thing I really don't understand. Like, I can understand you just being like, oh, I'm just gonna write whatever comes to mind, and it's like a book, you know, one self-contained book. Fine. You know, that works as long as you write the beginning, middle, and end. It's whatever. But if you want to write 15 books, like you have, you know, you kind of have to plan that. It's like, yo, yeah, you know, I'm gonna go visit a town an hour away. You don't really have to plan that trip. You just kind of get in the car and drive there, and you do whatever you need to do in that town, and that's all. But if you're like, hey, I am going to drive across the entirety of the United States and have absolutely no plans for when I'm stopping, where I'm stopping, and what I'm going to do where I'm stopped, or how much money I need to have on me to buy the food I need to eat, to buy the gas. Do I have enough funds to do things and go places and refill my fuel? You know, if you don't go through the outline checklist, I'm not saying it has to be super, you know, precise. I'm not saying you gotta be like, all right, so at 3:07, I'm going to stop the car and go to this location. I'm not saying you have to do that. But as long as you have a plan of like, okay, here's a hotel 8 hours away from me. I'm gonna drive there, you know, stop there for the day, go out to eat, go see local attractions in this area because I looked up where I was staying before I got in the car that day, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It's gonna make your trip a lot better, a lot easier on you, less stressful. And if you're gonna write 15 books by the seat of your pants, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna forget your plot. You're gonna, you know, have a lot of issues, and you're gonna write yourself into a corner where you're 14 books in, and the big bad is now some sort of incomprehensibly powerful being because you had to make it stronger than the last big bad, but you can't really get stronger, so the stronger you made it ridiculous. And it's just like, okay, well,
yes, the Cell Saga problem.
I think Dragon Ball Z is a little bit different because the entire genre is about them fighting progressively stronger opponents.
Well, the issue is more like the power scaling of the Android Saga is fucking whack.
You're not wrong.
Sorry to interrupt, but wasn't Cell Saga's issue that he wanted to make Gohan the protagonist, but people wanted Goku?
Yeah.
People wanted Goku back, and it had some really good fights, and then some things are just awful about it.
Yeah, I mean, again, though, but that was like because didn't the creator at that point have like a different idea of where he wanted to go and not taking into account the what the people who were watching his show wanted it?
Well, yes, and then also his editors were just like, no, you can't make these people the villains. You have to make this person the villain.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, he doesn't look villainous enough. Make him look like this. He's like, oh, he's too ugly. Make him handsome. And then we got perfect Cell.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's sort of my point, though. It's like it can kind of
appreciate is that the author was like, he's too ugly. Fine, I'm gonna keep him. Then I'm gonna make perfect Cell.
And then the editor stopped making him do things, and he's just like, "You want to know what my next villain is? It's a fucking cat. This is your new villain now, Dragon Ball fans. Fuck you."
Yeah.
And then people unironically really loved the cat.
Yeah.
Well, that's because he knows how to write a good character.
Yeah.
When he tries and he's not being held at gunpoint, turns out he does great with a lot of his character writing.
I mean, if you want talk fighting, shonen anime, then I think One Piece is actually a good example of this. Is for all of the completely ridiculous body shapes that show up in One Piece, the characters are decently well written.
Oda definitely knows how to do character writing and also character designs that aren't, Nami 977.
Yeah.
Which, you know what? I'll give him credit. I'd take that over Bleach.
Oh, what? You don't want Orihime number 5,000?
I mean, I think Bleach's problem was less character design issues and more that all of the characters were being sourced from two heavily thematic factions.
That's a fair criticism, but still, like...
Hey, remember when in Bleach all the war criminals were suddenly good guys?
Did that ever stop being a thing?
Thank you for narrowing that down. That really helped.
Yeah, that didn't narrow it down at all. Yeah. Yeah, no, Bleach's main issue when it comes to character setup and design is for every Soul Eater that shows up, they have to be wearing this uniform because they're part of a military faction, and they have to have these certain views, and yeah, you have some wiggle room, like that one guy who just wanted a good fight, and that was all he really wanted. He wasn't like super loyal to like doing anything besides getting a good fight unless the chips were really down. I mean, there's a bunch of characters like that, so that you have a little bit of wiggle room, but because it's a military organization, it's a military dictatorship, they have to wear a uniform, they have to look a certain way to a certain extent, they have to have certain attitudes to a certain extent, and so you don't get a lot of variation out of that. And then on the flip side, you have the Hollows and the Quincy, both also from military-ish dictatorships of a certain form or fashion. I mean, the Hollows were more like just pure anarchy
for the most part.
Yeah, but I mean, they were more anarchist in where the Hollows, operated off of rule of strong, which again heavily limited the sort of personalities you can have showing up in the Hollows, and it also ran off heavy theming. So the hollow had to be some sort of animal, and they had to have some sort of, abilities related to that animal. And, it goes on and on and on. And yeah, they were able to get away with, oh, well, this hollow can turn into the people it's killed because it's super special. Or, this hollow can temporarily fuse with these other 3 hollows to create this, like, summonable god unit. And it's like, all right, fine. So you get a little bit of variation because now you can start including, like, wild and wacky powers into it. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a certain range of opinions from the hollows that actually matter to the story. You're going to have a certain range of outfits, again, because of the heavy theming that hollows do. It's like, yeah, they're not all wearing the same outfit, but it's sort of like with Faunus, where they need to have an animal trait with a bone, with that animal trait being replaced by bone in some way. Or if it's not the animal trait being replaced by bone, they have the animal trait, but then they have another section of their body replaced by bone, and they all have to have a hole in their heart, and they all have to, look a certain fashion, and they all use abilities using Spanish, because why not? And then the Quincy are the same way as the Shinigami, where, again, they're a military faction, they all wear a uniform, they all have certain opinions that are shared. And so the only real way you could get a more varied character setup is the main character's main party, which, again, ended up taking a majority of people from already existing factions, so even that wasn't very varied. And then the characters that could be varied weren't very strong because they didn't have the 1 gajillion souls powering all of their abilities like hollows do. They didn't have
fucking power levels are literally the one way to kill your series. That's another thing.
I mean, it is, but it isn't. There's a certain level where power levels work, but it definitely, when you start putting numbers on things, when you, like, Wild Bow made this mistake, so I'll relate it back to that as well. Wild Bow came out with this threat scale level where they were like, okay, so this person's a brute 6. What does brute 6 mean? It means that we need a hero on site that can deal with either heavy strength or heavy regeneration or both. Okay. Well, then what is someone who has, like Saitama levels of strength, but like glass cannon level of durability? Are they a brute 10 still? Because brute 10 is needing the triumvirate to fight them. What makes a brute 12 then? Like, no one can fight them? What if the reason why no one can fight them is because they have an AoE that freezes everyone in place? Well, they're not very strong then. And
they just freeze everyone and then kill them while they're paralyzed.
Yeah,
AKA
literally.
Every single Diablo boss.
Yes, but it's like, they're not very strong then, and they're actually not that much of a threat as long as you're outside of their AoE. Well, then how much of a threat are they really? Well, they're a Shaker 12, okay, but they're a Shaker 12 that could be dealt with by an old lady with a handgun.
Well, maybe a rifle.
Maybe a rifle. But still, you understand my point, though, right? Where it's, when you try to start putting numbers on everything, things get weird, especially if the reason why the number exists isn't actually a denotation of how powerful they are, but the kind of threat response you need to it. And it's like, well, okay, so if actually to deal with this person, all you need is someone 50 feet away with a gun, then are they really a 12? Basically makes them a Shaker 1. Oh, but within those 50 feet, it is literally impossible to move.
That's great.
Okay, well
Please
now
go stand
they're a
60
big
feet away.
threat. Yeah, it's like, okay, but now they're a big threat. So it's like, are they a threat? Are they not a threat? And then it's like, on top of that, it's like a brute 12. What are they in relation to a shaker 12? No idea. Because the brute could literally have Saitama levels of durability and Saitama levels of strength. But what happens when the brute gets within 50 feet? Well, they can't move anymore. It's like, okay, so they can counter the brute 12, but they can't stop the brute 12. Yeah, but they can't stop the brute 12, but they can counter the brute 12. So it's like, what power level are they now? It gets very vague and gooey, effectively, and then you get a bunch of people arguing over who would win in these fights. I mean, normally you'll get people arguing who would win these fights anyway, but now when you put a number on things, people are like, oh, well, they're a shaker 12, so they win. Oh, well, they just stand 60 feet away, so actually they lose. It's like, okay, well, so how do you compare these numbers? Because 12 doesn't actually equal 12. It just equals the number of people you need. Yeah, it's just there.
Yeah, I think JoJo might have the most interesting power scaling, which is, oh, this dude's strength is A. What's that mean? He hits really hard. Okay. Can I hit him back? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
It's the one time I've seen power scaling just.
Well, because yeah,
it's explicitly stated you get stats, but the fights in that show, or in that, depending on what part you're in, are more about strategy than your stats. Your stats should be a part of your strategy, not just your strategy.
Right.
It's a surprisingly difficult thing to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
one of the reasons why, regardless of someone's opinion on JoJo's, I will respect Araki as a writer, because he does a good job handling these things that other people still don't get.
I still think part 8 is whack.
Beyond, Phoenix says, why would you need to plan for wandering town from town? It sounds kind of fun. It can be, but if your end goal is, I'm going to reach X destination by X time, and then it turns out you have 1 week left to reach that destination, but actually you're like 3 weeks away from driving because you didn't really plan your route and you're kind of just like going the next place at your pace. It's a bunch of unneeded stress on you, and it's kind of really just your fault at the end of the day.
Yeah. If the plan is, I'm just going to wander and that's it, well,
yeah,
good on you.
That's fine.
If your plan is, I'm going to wander from point A to point B, you need a tiny bit of planning.
Yeah. Things like Star Wars has a little bit of better power scaling going on. I mean, obviously the Jedi and Sith are just ridiculous, no matter how you frame it, because you got.
We'll set them to the side for this, I think.
But aside from the mystical woo-woo users, the power scaling is more kind of based on biology and the weapon that the person has. So it's a lot easier to balance that. And it's a lot easier to make a universal scaling chart. Like, no Mandalorian is going to beat a Wookiee in an arm wrestling contest.
Unless that Mandalorian is a Wookiee.
Yes, effectively. No. I'm not gonna go into that one. But like, the Hutts, they're very weak. They're very slow. but they're very conniving and they're rich, and so how you deal with a Hutt's going to be different from how you deal with a Wookiee. It's going to be different from how you deal with a Trandoshan versus, a Stormtrooper or whatever. And so you get these more universalized understandings of power, where if someone's running at you with a staff, just normal staff, and you have a disruptor pistol, generally people can just go, oh, well, yeah, the guy with the disruptor pistol wins. But when you start including, like, My Heroes of Academia, Marvel, Goku and the Super Saiyan gang,
the Super Saiyan gang,
One Piece,
the Super Saiyan money gang.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you get into these more shonen based, battle a day sort of storylines, where obviously the villain of the next battle has to be a little bit stronger than the previous villain, because otherwise he wouldn't make for a very good next fight if the character is stronger than the villain going into the fight. And now there's other ways you could do it. You can weaken the hero temporarily. You can make the villain have a unique counter to the hero but still be weaker than them. But you can only do that so many times. If this is like the 5th villain that has a unique counter to the hero's powers.
Well, first of all, you know what? Credit to you, author. That's hard. To come up with 5
unique counters, yeah.
If they're genuinely unique.
Yeah.
Counters,
Yeah, and eventually, even Fairy Tail ended up falling back on how there's Dragon Slayers? Well, this guy's a Demon Slayer, which is stronger than a Dragon Slayer, and so he can eat the Dragon Slayer's fire, but the Dragon Slayer can't eat the Demon Slayer's fire, except, oh my god, the hero just ate the Demon Slayer's fire and used the ultimate Demon Dragon Slayer punch and won the battle. Oh, then the God Slayer showed up with their fire magic, and oh my god, he did the exact same thing to him too.
I don't remember Demon Slayers. I very distinctly the moment I gave up on Fairy Tail was literally when they said, these are the God Slayers. Well, what are they? They're Dragon Slayers, but for gods.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so they're just better.
Yeah,
and then Natsu eats it.
Yeah.
I'll give him points for this. I did get a chuckle out of, like, Dragon Slayers can't eat these because they're, like, divine versions. And Natsu proceeds to say, yeah, fuck that, and nearly kill himself eating it. I'm like, you know what? I'll give points for tenacity.
Yeah.
That's about it.
But
the reactions of everyone there of like, wait, no, hang on, that's cheating.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, though, it's a clear sign that your plot has sort of lost course. If the best you can come up with as the next strongest villain for Natsu to fight would be a previously unheard of demon god dragon slayer who is able to shoot heat beams from his eyes that Natsu can't defend himself from.
Except now he can.
Except halfway through the fight, he now can.
I think I would have been fine with him eating those flames if they also hadn't let him use them. I think that was kind of where I kind of lost it. Like,
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm fine if they can, like, stop it in exchange for, I don't know, taking damage, but him being able to use it is the point where it's like, nah, that's the line that you shouldn't be crossing, because never mind the fact that you were dumb enough to include power scaling in your story, you have just thrown it all out of whack by doing this.
Yeah. Okay, so then while Bo finishes off this essay of his, it feels less exciting to randomly write my story when I try to be surprised by what the next chapter brings to my own story. That said, if the trade-off is that I know what I'm going to write, it could mean less points where I stall out and wonder what I'm going to do next. A change-up that makes my subconscious lack of tension feel more tension because I'm going against the grain, and that's harder. No, planning shit is not going against the grain.
It's honestly, I'd argue it's a sign of some amount of growth as a writer that you find it a little harder to do certain types of stories off the cuff now.
Well, I mean, he's finding it hard to plan to write stories, so I wouldn't exactly call that growth of a writer. I would call that more of anti-growth.
Well, it sounds to me like his complaint is that he has to plan it now, but he doesn't have much experience with planning.
Yes.
Like he recognizes that planning is the way to go, especially for larger stories, which I'm still astounded to this day that all of Worm had next to zero planning aside from characters
Yeah.
that he wanted in the story at some point.
Yep.
That made me so angry when I found out about that.
A part of me was like, you know what? I kind of respect the ability to do this, but it also explains a lot of things that in hindsight, I was kind of bothered by the way the story progressed in certain parts.
Right. I should say maybe I'll go back to some elements of world building and character building and digging into the personal and do more of what I used to do in the past and see if I can recapture the positive energy of my prior stories. What did I do when writing Taylor or Kennett that made the stories flow better like they did for me? Because that did play a part in things of trying to write these new stories and why it failed. I think again, ultimately, it comes down to the earlier stories. You were enjoying writing them more. You were enjoying writing them more because you weren't super popular yet. You didn't have a lot of pressure on pushing out chapter after chapter. You are looking back on these stories now with rosy-eyed blinders on, effectively, because these stories weren't good or better or more enjoyable for you because your process was better and you somehow lost along the way. They were better for you because time has dulled negative emotions, and now when you look at these stories, all you remember is the enjoyment you had when making them and not any of the stress, because obviously the stress was a far smaller portion. And so what you're really feeling is nostalgia. You're not actually feeling that these stories are better. You're just feeling that you think they were better because you're remembering times that in your mind are better. You had something to say, Max?
Well, it just I don't know how he's actually. I don't know if he's viewing the stories as better, or his process is better. But I think he just needs to go back to basics and write for himself and not for an audience.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I do not think my first stories are better than what I put out since. They are not. I have in fact reread those stories to remind myself, this is how bad you were when you started. But I did have I did enjoy it more, but part of it was because I was still new to all the processes. That part he's not going to get back. He's not going to get back the wonder of writing your first story. But if he stops giving a shit about his audience, because I don't know if this is an actual like livable income he has or just a side income, just say fuck the audience, write what you want, write what comes naturally. He's giving too much of a shit, I think, is part of the problem. On top of the nostalgia glasses that you articulate.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly possible. I think he's only earning like $2,000 now. Let's pull that up real quick and.
I like how you said only. Shit, man, I wish.
Well, I mean,
wish we could earn
compared to
that
the
with our
point
rating.
author, you know. I mean, compared to the porn author who's making 8K, you know, only making 2K is.
Fuck him.
Oh yeah, he's earning a mere 5.7 USD a month.
All right, I'm going to retract some of my statement. You still need to give a little bit of shit of your audience because this is an actual livable income that you're making right
Well,
now.
not just a livable income. He's in Canada, which means he's actually getting like $8,000 a month.
Oh yeah, dude.
Well, not
Yeah.
quite that bad, but yeah, it's pretty bad.
I think it's still that bad actually.
No, last I checked, it was, I think, it's like 0.68.
Why did it give you Mexican peso?
I don't know.
Because you misspelled Canadian by one letter.
Wow, look at that, $8,000.
Okay, never mind. That's really bad.
Yeah.
It's always been bad.
Yeah.
I don't think the Canadian dollar has ever been a 1-to-1 with the US dollar.
Oh no, not even slightly, no. But point being is that this dude's making a fully livable wage, and he's still going to college, and he's getting his PhD or some shit now.
What is he even
I don't know.
going for?
I don't care.
I hope it's something more useful than an English degree.
I think it's an English degree.
Oh god. I swear to God, if those are trick-or-treaters.
But yeah, it's like he is making a massive amount of money. You know, $8,000 a month in Canadian, 12 months. That's 96K. Right? Am I insane? No, that's way more than 96K. No, it's 96K. Yeah. Yeah, 96K. He's making 96K a month, or a year, which is a lot of money. And then when you have to consider the fact that he's not leaving his house really, because his job would be in his house. He doesn't have a family to support. Whatever house he's currently living in is probably not rented. It's probably a family home. Say probably. Because, you know, he was staying in that house before he had a job and before he did Patreon. So, he probably doesn't have a lot of bills, honestly. He probably has very low expenses, and he's earning a very large amount of money. I don't see why he needs to get a PhD. I don't see why he needs to do all of these activities that are consuming his time and leaving him not able to write when his job is writing, because he is earning $8,000 a month from it.
For his country, yeah.
For his country, yes.
I don't know. Maybe he got something other than writing that he's hoping to do.
Sure.
I mean, you know, maybe he's just like, hey, the writing thing's gonna run out, so I want to have.
Like, I'll admit, I've had people say constantly I should open a bakery just for the cookies I make, but I don't want to do that as a job because right now it's a relaxing hobby from time
No,
to time.
yeah, no, and I get that, but I don't think you can use the same excuse. Was that a trick-or-treater?
Yeah, they were trick-or-treaters.
I don't think you can use that same excuse when you're now earning $8,000. Like, if someone was paying you $8,000 a month to make cookies, you really can't use the excuse of, oh, I don't really want to monetize it because right now it's just a hobby. It's like,
no, you can use it as an excuse. It's just not a good excuse.
It's like, buddy, it is monetized now. You did monetize it. you monetized it so much, you're now earning, quadruple any job you could pick up in the industry that doesn't require a PhD.
What the fuck is he going for a PhD for?
I don't know.
That's gonna bother me because, like, as someone who dropped out of college, I can now sit here and say confidently, only a handful of professions should go to university or college.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As
No, 100%.
as an engineer dropout, most of engineering, you don't need to go to college. You should be looking at internships and apprenticeships.
Yeah.
Fuck going to college, university.
Yeah.
You
Also,
need field experience.
Yeah.
Get field experience instead.
Yeah.
Yes. Also, just remember, friendly reminder: Action Slacks has a PhD.
Yes. Yes, and he
He's a
does call
doctor.
he does call it the most useless degree he's ever received.
What was it even for?
Psychology.
Okay, first off, there's a lot of money to be made in that field if you can actually, land a job.
Right, but the thing is that
that explains a lot about why he's so successful from a comedy standpoint.
Yes, he did say, because his master's was in economics.
Again, that's actually another solid degree if you can get in the field.
Yeah, and he was saying basically that he was during the height of his career, he was earning more money than he could expect from 10 years into the industry of his chosen college fields.
Oh, that doesn't sound right at all. That's a lot of money.
Yes.
Like, we're talking a couple $100,000 a year. You know what? Never mind. I've seen the numbers you guys have posted with him. Never mind. It makes sense.
Yeah. Like Asmongold, for example, makes $42K a month on bad months.
And yet he lives like he makes $420 a month.
Yes. And people have commented on that before, and his response was?
He has nothing he wants to buy.
Well, then I won't have to worry when I only make $420 a month.
That's also fair.
Because, you know what Asmongold has a master's in? Or would have had a master's in?
No, I don't.
Economics.
Oh my god.
Because he dropped out. Yeah.
What if he dropped out for partially the same reason I did, which was you guys are putting a whole lot of bullshit in my hands I don't need for this career.
Yeah, pretty much. He was getting handed a lot of bullshit, and his WoW career really skyrocketed. His WoW streaming career really skyrocketed, and he decided he was like, well, why am I paying so much money to be taught something that won't be relevant to this new career that has opened up for me, that's earning me a whole boatload of money?
Who was this?
That was a little more immediate in his case. My thing was like, no, I've looked into this specific field of engineering.
Right.
I don't need half the shit you're telling me I have to take.
Yeah. And that was another thing that I really didn't like as an IT major. They made me take all of these. Like, they made me take a science class on biochemistry.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you have to have one lab class. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Make my lab class building networks or something.
Yeah, that should have been a lab. Wow, that's.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just hate IT in general because people legit will look at your 5 years of experience, say, "Nah, fuck you," and take some kid fresh out of college who just happens to have an A+ cert. That certification doesn't do anything.
Nope, it is
at all.
You okay?
You okay there?
We're good. I accidentally hit buttons.
What the fuck did I do?
Yeah, it's going to. So yeah, it's wild because like you get people bring it back to fanfiction and stuff. You get people that they get these English degrees and writing degrees, and it's like, nah, you don't, unless you are gonna be a linguistics career, specifically someone who sits there and reads through language to determine the evolution of the language they are specialized in. you don't need an English degree to write. You don't need a linguistics degree to write. You don't need a writing degree to write. You just need to write and accept that your writing is not good and that you need to get better at it.
If you want a degree, then go to community college, 2 years in and out.
Yeah.
It's a bit more focused, or it should be a bit more focused.
Yeah, you'd think so.
It'll be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
So much cheaper.
As someone who went to community, I cannot tell people enough. Go to your local community college. Please go to
Odds
your local
are,
community college.
odds are your community college will be a better choice for you. Like, yes, that degree from the University of Alabama, or from or any one of the Ivy Leagues, or any one of the big names, looks good. But a degree in general is what looks good, even if it doesn't make sense.
Well, and here's the thing: you don't even have to do that. Go all of your math class, your speech class, all of your history classes. Take every single one of those at your community college. Then, when you've been there for 2 years and you have an associate's, then go to Fancy Pants McGee School.
If you're still certain that's the path you want to go on.
Yeah.
So to reel it all back in, stuff I'm talking about here of why you just need to get better at writing, and please, for the love of God, stop writing your fetishes into literally everything. Stop it. Get some help.
As well. Yeah.
We got The Bachelor of Hogwarts here, by female author.
Oh God. All right, I'm gonna get seconds for dinner. I'm just...
Where Snape makes a bet with McGonagall, and the bet was whatever, but what they betted on was Snape's love life, and so Snape has to recruit a student, namely self-insert as Hermione Granger, to, quote, get him out from under McGonagall's thumb and end the blind dates. And at this point, they will find true love and have sex. You know, this teacher and student.
Nope. No, I should have walked away sooner.
Should have walked away
Press
sooner.
X to say no.
Yeah. Speaking of Camp Half-Blood, you know what? Let's look at that next.
Oh, poor Percy.
Yercy Jackson. So this is relevant to what we talked about earlier in power scaling issues. Because we have, the gods and the demigods read the Sea of Monsters. Again, this is a reading story. Like, there is nothing more unoriginal than a reading story, where you blatantly steal someone else's story and then have your characters go, whoa, that just happened in the story? Whoa. For every single chapter. What kind of commentary are they really going to write about it? Like, don't get me wrong, I liked the King's take on a reading of where he had his characters from his his Halo Mass Effect crossover. The versions of those characters proceeded to read some Gary Stu Shepard self-insert story where Shepard was this perfect creature that could do no wrong, and they made fun of it. Like, they genuinely made fun of it, and the author also only really focused on the bits they could make fun of. They didn't just copy and paste the entire story. They basically, had key lines show up, the characters all commented on them, yada yada, right? And it was interesting enough, and another part of what made it interesting was that the author, the King, only did 5 chapters of it, and was like, alright guys, that's enough. I'm not going to read the whole story. I just came here to make fun of it a little bit. It's like, oh, there we go. He had the little segment, and I talked about this last time on the podcast, of you can do pretty much any story as long as you have a relevant segment length to it. And yeah, he did 5 chapters. It was like 10k words long. And it was fine. He wasn't trying to go anywhere with it. He just wanted to, you know, mock this other dude's story for just being so cliched, predictable, power fantasy, obnoxious. And he did it with a cast of characters that were unique and well written, that stayed true to their source material. But that's not what a majority of these people do. A majority of these people do is they see a really long story and they try and basically hijack that story's popularity to feed it into their own story's popularity, because it's like, oh, don't you want to see all of the canon Percy Jackson characters react to this, you know, power wank fantasy story?
Oh, we must be talking about reading fanfics or something.
Yes, we are.
Cool.
We
also,
are.
Jen, I'm sorry to tell you, but one of the rules of reading fanfics is they lose their memories once they're gone from whatever big white room they're in.
Yeah, the most cringe part of those sorts of stories.
Cowards, a lot of them.
So what I'm hearing is Max wants them to suffer the psychological damage.
I would love to see a reading fanfic where some massive revelation happens and people actually stop reading the story and act on it, and how the world devolves from those choices. Yeah, that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to when I was answering Jen. Like the rule is always you'll forget everything you see here once you leave this room. It's like, man, you fucking cowards. Don't have a reading fanfic if
we'll
you're
be
not
right
gonna
back.
do something with it. Oh, where'd Sneaky go?
I do not know.
I think he just went to get some water or something.
Oh. Okay then. So Atin, your Praetors are coming along. Well, your Praetor is coming along.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's gonna be till it's done though, because we have a cold snap in Georgia coming in tonight. So that's up in the air.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, if it makes you feel any better, it wouldn't be done at all. So if it weren't for you, so.
Oh, wait. Oh, if the cold snap actually does end this weekend, cool. I can finish everything up this weekend then. Got the metallics down tonight, and I got the red down, but the red's definitely gonna need an extra coat or two to smooth out. But yeah, it'll probably work out, I hope.
Listen, like I said, it wouldn't be done at all if it weren't for you, so.
Anyway, so speaking of power fantasies and story structure, an armored mage begging for someone to save him, a ritual to Hecate brings the goddess herself down to aid him. Drawn by his willingness to sacrifice for power, arming him with a newbie's grimoire, he sets off alone into the world, desperate to learn all he can before finding a new home and a new path with those rising powers known as demigods and the war they are brewing. So this is featuring an OC. Self-insert, obviously. So there's a lot of problems with this in general. The ritual bringing a god down. Descend. To you, specifically. You, a person who can't use magic at all, does a ritual that somehow summons the goddess of magic itself. And the goddess of magic's reaction to you begging for power is, I really appreciate how desperate you are for power. Here's power. Does not make for a compelling story. And on top of that, you have 2 chapters totaling 600 words each chapter. That's terrible. That is frankly awful in terms of, I mean, admittedly, yes, it was only a week apart between postings, but 600 words is not enough to write a scene, let alone a chapter.
It's not even an introductory author's note.
Pretty much. And limiting yourself to such restricted chapters limits what you can actually do in the chapter heavily. So, again, I'll recommend what I always say whenever we see stories like these. If you're capable of putting out a chapter a week and those chapters are only 600 words long, put out one chapter a month and make a 3K word chapter.
Yeah.
We got Treading in the Unknown, an AU, of course. Percy's summer custody with his father begins in tragedy. While adapting to a new change, an unexpected relative jumps into the picture, creating havoc in the 16-year-old's life. Very vague. Mixed.
Is it a crossover?
No. I'm of mixed opinion on it. It's got 22 chapters with 70k words, which is pretty decent. It's got an update rate of beginning August 27th, so pretty good. But it's labeled Hurt, Comfort, and Family. Not always a red flag, but generally, if something's labeled Hurt, Comfort, and they also make sure to include AU in there, it pretty much means they are going to, on a macro scale, manipulate how everyone acts so they can solely reach the ending that they want to have in the story.
Makes sense.
Which is kind of cringe. And clearly, the fandom supports my opinion of this, as there is only 16 favorites.
Oof.
Yes, I've seen that one before, Sam. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that one before. That's not something I can show on stream. Son of Daedalus. That's right, Daedalus, the labyrinth maze maker, the immortal creator. The man who beat death in Percy Jackson. He had a son, because of course he did. And of course the son he had was also recently, when he's a machine body. Because of course he did. Why not? A story of a half-blood named Lewis, unclaimed by his godly parent, whoever they might be. He's staying at Camp Half-Blood, unclaimed, and while Percy tries his best to find Lewis's godly parent, Percy disappears, but things change entirely when Annabeth comes back with company.
That was always one thing that I appreciated about Percy Jackson. Yeah, it turns out most of the gods are kind of deadbeats, which was highly accurate to Greek myth.
Yes. So my commentary here on this story is the summary sucks. There is a preference towards keeping things generally vague in your summary. oh, bad things happened, and then the heroes gotta rise up and save the day. Can he do it? Or will the dark forces of the world beat his spirit down? A very generic but viable summary. Going from a very detailed start of like, this character's name is Lewis and he wasn't claimed for 5 whole months, and Percy Jackson tried really hard to help him, and then one day Percy Jackson disappeared, and then Annabeth came back with someone else. It's like, okay. I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to react to that. Not sure where the hook was of like, oh, I wonder who Annabeth came back with. I don't care who Annabeth came back with.
Could it be your OC because you have no way to write?
No, it's not the OC, actually. The OC was there for 5 months before that.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
It means I can't just disregard the story as trash.
I mean, it is trash.
No, you can't.
Going by the title of the story, I assume the person Annabeth comes back with is Daedalus. So, yeah. We got what trauma does. Over her life, Annabeth has been through a lot of trauma. Because of this, the books never really address it.
Maybe the books don't address it because it doesn't need to be addressed.
Maybe the books don't address it because it didn't really happen. I mean, yeah, she had a couple of traumatic moments.
There's no reason to dwell on it. Like,
well,
there's no...
It's not just that, it's literally canonized in the books that demigods don't feel the same way as people. And like, watching your friend get exploded isn't gonna make you go, oh my god, no. It's gonna make you go, oh, I'm gonna beat your face in, by Zeus and Hera, watch me. And then you kill like 300 people and eat 12. And
aggression has increased.
Yeah, like the
violence
demigods
has escalated.
Yeah, literally, but like the demigods literally are just built different. And so being like, oh, the things that Annabeth has been through were so traumatic. Oh.
Also, I want to be clear. Yeah, Beth had some terrible things happen to her.
Yeah.
Not any more than most of the other demigods.
No. So boring, honestly, so boring. This fic aims to explore Annabeth's trauma and what it would realistically do to her. We don't know. Okay? What we do know is how the books handled it, which is have them not really be affected by trauma. You believe the books did it wrong, and then you claim that you're going to do it the real way. Okay. What does that mean?
Never mind the fact that even us real life humans have different ways of dealing with stuff. Some repress it, some don't feel it, some freak out about it.
What the absolute ungodly, unholy thing have you posted, Pat?
Oh, I don't want to know.
Sibling incest, parent-child incest. I can't say those words on stream, technically.
Oh, good. You don't have to read it.
We wanted to do a clean stream this week.
Yeah, extremely. Yes, we did talk about that. Extremely underage consensual sex.
That's
Oh, hey, Fairy Tale Dragon Slayer. How are you?
I just want people to stop putting their fetishes everywhere.
No, people won't.
I know people won't. Doesn't stop me from wishing it.
If wishes were fishes.
I thought you wanted some well, I'm not putting it on stream. I was just reading some parts of it out loud. But yeah, I mean, it's just people just. I think what a lot of people have forgotten about stories is that the story is for everyone else besides you.
Nonsense.
And don't get me wrong, it can be therapeutic for you. It can be as enjoyable for you as it is for the people reading it. But at the end of the day, the purpose of writing down the story is to share it with people who aren't you. So what you shouldn't do is write a story that is exclusive to your interests, specifically fetishes, specifically your brand of politics, specifically your tastes, I guess you could say, to make it even broader. I'm not saying if you like cyberpunk and you want to write a cyberpunk story, I'm not saying don't do that. What I am saying is keep in mind that if you want to write a cyberpunk story, not everyone is going to want half of the book dedicated to about how people can now mechanically transition by getting cyberdongs and stuff.
Yeah, I really wish Borderlands had learned that lesson.
Yeah, where it's just like, you know, yes, technically I suppose they could. Should you make a story that focuses pretty much exclusively on that as a plot point? No. No, you really shouldn't. Not when I say not everyone, I mean you're part of like the 0.005% that actually want to read about something like that. So if you want to write that story, keep it to yourself.
I wouldn't say keep it to yourself. Just don't be surprised when you don't get a lot of traction.
I mean, yes, you're not wrong. My counter argument to that is, however, if you are being paid to produce a story for a game, a movie, a TV show, a book, reel it in. Don't be posting on public with that content.
What I think I'm hearing is don't be horny on main.
Effectively, yes. I mean, it also applies to politicals, you know. So let's use GTA for example. You know, if you're a writer for GTA, what you shouldn't be doing is making the main story of GTA about punching Nazis in the face because all of these modern Nazis are bad people and they need to die for expressing their opinions. That's going to appeal to a very small crowd, especially when you portray these new Nazis as perfectly average people with completely average opinions. I realize it is somewhat futile to request that someone who legitimately goes around screaming about Nazis and how they're everywhere and they're in our systems secretly.
They are in their walls.
Yeah. I can understand how this person would be more likely to ignore my advice, because this sort of person is very charged, shall we say, towards certain patterns of thought. And one of those patterns of thought that would prevent such advice from sitting in on someone is the idea that not everything is political and not everything has to be pointed out as political, and that if you're making a game about a person who performs crime to get ahead in life, maybe you don't need to have 90% of the story being about how all of your political opponents are evil and need to be eliminated.
I cannot believe that politicians are opposed to crime.
Maybe if you're writing a GTA story, you should make it about the character and how they evolve as they go from some gutter runner to a rich and powerful person from all of the crime they commit, and whether that catches up to them in the end, and how they react to such a thing happening to them.
And that's why Mafia will be the best crime story.
More or less.
Although the real question is, which Mafia?
1.
A correct opinion.
Mafia 1 was excellent. I think Mafia 2 is pretty good still.
Mafia 2 is good. I think it has a better cast of main characters, but Mafia 1 is just... It's just so much better. Especially the remaster.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's my little spiel about how I really don't want to see someone's sexual fantasies written and published on a publicly accessible website, and how I'm starting to get kind of tired of it showing up in my media that is not fan content. Like in WoW, for example, there was an entirely new species introduced of majority female winged angels who are all giantesses who multiple times throughout the story pick you up in one hand and carry you places.
So what I'm hearing is someone played an ASMR in D&D and said, I want to add this to my game.
Also, they had incredibly thick thighs and large boobs.
I don't know why you just repeated what I just said.
I know, but my point is the second I saw this race, I was like, oh, all right. And then like the next 3 quests for this race that I did involved them picking me up at some point and carrying me around. I was like, oh.
This be someone's fetish.
This is someone's fetish. Okay. And my enjoyment of the quests I was doing massively
dropped instantly.
Yeah. And because now I had to look at everything with the new knowledge now in my head of someone was enjoying themselves when they added this in.
Like that fucking South Park thing where it's just like, oh, we're so sorry you don't like this new race, and just like fucking rubbing himself.
Yes, the BP oil spill meme, yes.
Yeah.
I sound depressed? Oh, I am depressed. WoW was a juggernaut in the gaming world. WoW was milking people for their money, hand over fist. And people accepted it because of two things. WoW had anchored everyone to accepting that to play WoW you needed to pay a subscription, and that the cost of the subscription was justified by the high quality content being produced. Then they over monetized the game, and they also massively degraded the storyline of the characters, the plot, the gameplay mechanics, everything. And while you can blame upper management to an extent, it was also because the people who were making new WoW content didn't understand WoW. They shifted away from war, death, carnage, war, threats on the horizon, banding together under a truce because the threat that just showed up is simply too powerful to allow to continue while the two factions fight each other. And even under the banner of truce, countless battles still occur between the two factions simply because of blood feuds, because of grudges, because of the actions taken by the leaders, because of the actions taken by the populations upon each other, for a whole bunch of reasons. And they turned it into this touchy-feely, wish-washy, we're suing for peace and we're all gonna, hold our hands together and sing Kumbaya now. Ridiculous story that the stakes keep raising, and the picture keeps getting bigger, and the villains keep getting more, I can't even say evil, comically evil. But it's not, we're defeating the villains because we're all a bunch of hardened badasses who are just so amazing. Now it's like, oh, you defeated the bad guy? Oh, the bad guy is gonna look at you and be like, oh, you didn't understand my plan. I was trying to save the world because the dangers that are coming require us to be united. And now with my death, you have doomed us all.
Who cares, lol? I got a 27 plus beat stick.
Literally, though, and the biggest issue with that sort of stuff is it could have been good. But the 2 years that expansion pack has been out, the 2 years we've known about this main bad guy who's been in dozens of custom cutscenes up until this point, where we beat him up and defeated him. You know what wasn't done at any point in time? Explaining to the audience what might be coming. Explaining to the audience that maybe the bad guy isn't a genocidal maniac. Explaining, like, literally just came out of nowhere. There was never an indication before the very last cutscene that maybe the bad guy was pulling a Palpatine.
Oh yeah, the thing that like literally came out of fucking nowhere for no reason.
Yes. And there was just no information on it. And they did the same with the newest expansion pack as well, where apparently several core parts of lore were written into the books, which were released a year into the expansion pack. And these core parts of lore were explaining why this expansion pack even happened. So not only are they being posted in obscure books no one's going to read, but they're being posted a year in to the expansion already being released. And on top of that, they are just not good. The plot beats are terrible.
I have read exactly. I want to be clear. I love World of Warcraft. Okay? It's great. I have read exactly one World of Warcraft book.
Lich King?
Lich King.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, no, and back in the day, the books that came out for World of Warcraft were about expanding upon unneeded sections of the story. That would have been just cool to know more about. Now, these books are a core part of the lore that will explain things you would have had no idea about if you hadn't played the minigames that were boring and stupid. And you go to the adventure table every day to go play your idle game. And all these other stupid mechanics that make no sense and are just clout chasing the most popular thing that is currently on YouTube. And it has destroyed the story. It's destroyed the characters.
The main issue as well is like there's so much shit that's like late game only, and like half of it is not even for like story. It's like all for gear.
Well, that's the thing. Is that's another major change they did to WoW and how they've ruined storytelling in WoW. Is before it used to be you played Raid 1 to get gear for Raid 2, to get gear for Raid 3, to get gear for Raid 4, to get gear for Raid 5, to get gear for Raid 6. Now it's you play Raid 1. Then Raid 2 comes out and you play only Raid 2. Then Raid 3 comes out and you only play Raid 3.
Because everyone's just like, oh, this one's too hard. We can't do it.
No, it's not even from difficulty.
You sure? Because I definitely remember a bunch of people complaining about that shit.
Well, I mean, they were hard because, again, keep in mind that someone invented a add-on that reads the code of what the boss is going to do and tells everyone exactly how to counter it. So they started making the bosses obnoxiously hard if you didn't have the add-on, because they just assumed people would be cheating. But no, what I'm trying to say is that the gearing switched from going through the storyline of getting into the raid, of understanding what was going on, why you were there, what you were doing, attuning to it, doing the whole rigmarole, getting the gear, and then doing the attunement and the lore dump on the next raid and why you were there and killing people there. And you just kept doing that for each raid, so you could, if you sat down and read what was going on, you could understand what was going on. And that's not saying that that's pretty much what happened, but it is a good way to tell a story in an MMO setting by making people just play the MMO. But if someone didn't raid in Season 1 because they didn't really feel like getting the gear, because it was too hard because it was Season 1, they don't get the storylines involved in Season 1. And then they decide to start raiding in Season 2. And instead of needing to actually do Season 1 so you can understand what's even going on, now all you have to do is do a bunch of the catch-up quests to get Season 1 gear, which effectively lets you do Season 2 now. So you completely skip over season 1 entirely and just go straight to season 2. And this was a terrible idea, because what it encouraged was for you to not play the game. Because what's the point of going to get gear in season 1 if season 2 is going to come out in 3 months and make it all completely pointless?
See, and here's the funny thing. Once again, Blizzard's refusal, I don't know, I don't even want to say Blizzard, right? Division's refusal to admit that Blizzard is no longer cock of the walk, so to speak, is hurting them, because guess what? Once again, that's a problem that's been solved by Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV has key story content tied to raids, right? But guess what? All you have to do is just go play the story on simple mode if you care about the story. They also make it so that part of the weekly rotation for people to go and get the tokens to continue to gear up is to do, guess what? Old raids.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. And then you can do, I know there's a raid mode that also allows you to get gear in your current gear level, even though it's the old gear, but it's just been scaled up.
Yeah, yes, that's called Savage content.
Right. And then there's like some sort of like crazy Uber mode as well that's like insano.
Yeah, the crazy Uber mode is for the people who hate themselves.
Yeah. But yeah, Final Fantasy handles it quite well, and it's, you know,
but yeah, sorry, the last thing I was going to say was they also have something else that's really good. Multiple months between seasons. And I know, that sounds crazy. But yeah, they just keep a relatively long gap between seasons. And they don't have that fucking problem, guys.
Right. Well, I mean, not only that, they also had one of the lead developers, when asked what are people supposed to do between seasons,
yes.
And the lead developer was like, well, stop playing the game.
Yeah.
If you've beaten all of the content in the current iteration of the game, then stop playing it.
Yeah.
Which,
how do I keep my motivation up?
Don't
go play something else, bro.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, the World of Warcraft designers are like, no, you got basically like keep playing this 24/7. You got to keep reaching for the higher number, because infinite scaling, guys, isn't that so interesting and inventive? No. Be gone. Yeah, it's just, you gotta write a story to its medium. That's why I'm depressed, because these people just don't understand how to write, and it's one thing if they are not understanding how to write, and what all they're destroying is properties that they tried to launch. That's fine. That is what it is. You launched a product, and then you destroyed that product by not understanding how to sell the product. But these people are being handed on a silver platter gold machines, and their reaction to this is to choke out the goose that is laying these golden eggs. Not because of greed, but because they're stupid. So yeah, it's very depressing. Yeah, they try to make foie gras with the gold goose, and instead of actually stuffing it with stuffing, they stuff it full of shit. Literal feces. Echoes of Eternity, Ancient Rome AU, super historically inaccurate and out of character.
Did you say Romeu?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, did you forget that Mr. Rick
No.
Romans?
No. Ancient Romeu. All this is taking place back before Christ now. Because that's what you came to read about is an ancient Romeu. Why? Just do a story in the world where it's taking place before Christ. And so the monsters are everywhere, and they're not hiding, and the demigods are everywhere, and they're not hiding, and the threats are everywhere, and they're coming for you, and you gotta get good quick, or else. That'd be an interesting Percy Jackson story. Yeah, of course, obviously you wouldn't be able to use the main cast, but you would still be playing in the sandbox of the world to a accurate-ish degree, and you could still have a character who's knowledgeable of any sort of experience level, because if they are a demigod, they've probably been fighting since a very young age, as most demigods are, especially during the ancient times.
May or may not have training.
Yeah, so no, there's just so much that can be it's just so easy. So easy. The one time that making a self-insert OC effectively can be hand-waved away, and you decide to shove all of the characters that don't belong in that time period into that time period just so you can get those few extra clicks. For what? Yeah, I heard about what Bungie did.
What happened?
Bungie decided to do some really stupid stuff with Destiny again. And
They
fire a
also
bunch of
fucking
people.
died.
Yeah, and they
What
fired
did
a
they
bunch
do
of
now?
people. Yeah.
Oh, they fired
They
the
delayed the
original
game
director
and-
for all of the Halo music, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good lord. I knew
Not
that,
only
like,
did they fire Marty O'Donnell, they fired Salvatore, and it's just like, why the fuck would you fire the person that's been literally carrying your company?
Because they've been working at that location for a long period of time and thus have accumulated a large salary due to their massive success and their long time period loyalty to the company. And clearly, if you just got to make that extra bottom dollar, the smartest idea you can possibly have is to cut the person making the bottom dollar.
You know, I was willing to come back because you brought my boy Cade back. But now you're just idiots. Like, I already knew they were idiots, but I was willing to come back to see what they did with my boy Cade.
Okay. Are you still gonna go back, or are you just not gonna bother now?
They got rid of one of the best things, the good music.
Yeah.
Unironically.
I actually recently just found a remix on YouTube where the first 3 Halos have their theme song linked together. Yeah.
Oh,
Yo,
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
link that shit. Link that shit.
But yeah, so it's 9 o'clock and I'm depressed, and I think we'll cut it here, folks. Come back on Friday because there's always more, and it'll just always get worse.